Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Padres EVT podcast. Now, we are doing this in a different format today. We're going live here on YouTube. Normally, this will be over on the Padres EVT podcast channel, but for today, for the sake of getting it out there, just kicking it off here, this one should be linked to the EVT channel at least after the stream, if not the very next day. So look forward to that if you are subscribed to the Padres EVT podcast channel and on Twitter. Going to go ahead and there's a lot to discuss, quite frankly. As you can see in our ticker down here, the Padres have a new manager and there's something going on with ownership. There's a lot that has been answered, a lot that has yet to be answered. So we will surely get to that today. We're currently waiting for our EVT staff to jump on board because we're hoping to have a few other perspectives as well. So in the meantime, thank you all for joining us. And let's go ahead and dive right in. So last week, it was reported that Padres hired Craig Stammen, former reliever, as their next manager. That's true. Wound up being true. He is, the next skipper for the Padres. Excuse me. And it's very interesting because you never really see a pitcher get hired as the manager. But now I believe he's the first pitcher since Bud Black to be hired as a major league manager. And he's inheriting a very interesting situation because the Padres, as currently constructed, are a playoff team. And, there's still a lot that's going to be determined this offseason about whether they are going to be looking into free agency, whether they are going to be big players on the international scene. For example, there's obviously free agents like Tatsuya Imai, Kazuma Okamoto, Munetaka Murakami, among many others who could be making a jump to MLB. But now we know that, it's very much possible. As you can see, for those of you who are watching, there is eastvillagetimes.com where we bring you all of our coverage of the Padres in the local San Diego sports scene. But there's a lot that the Padres can do now that their managerial situation is sorted out. Ruben Niebla, their pitching coach, is set to return and is likely going to be not just the pitching coach, but also the associate manager, as was reported by Kevin Acee. And it's about building up this staff and what they're going to do going forward. So speaking of the San Diego Padres, for those of you this is visiting eastvillagetimes.com, we have all our useful subcategories. As you can see, San Diego Padres. And, the Padres need to look for a hitting coach. They need to look for coaching talent that is going to help the offense get the most out of this team, because this team was one of the best in 2025 on the mound, but at the plate, there were some struggles on offense, if you will. There were certainly times where the team was hitting, and then August came along and they had that month-long-ish slump at the worst possible time. So it's just San Diego Padres now have a manager. They still have pitching coaches. They have that side of their staff complete. So now it's just a matter of who are they going to bring in to be their hitting coach, because quite frankly, they lost out on their hitting coach last week because Victor Rodriguez, their hitting coach the last couple seasons, is now going to be the hitting coach for the Houston Astros. So the Padres are going to lose out on valuable coaching. As you can see here, Victor Rodriguez has joined the Astros staff as their new hitting coach. Now, some Padres discourse will tell you that, maybe this is a good thing, but the real question is going to be, can Craig Stammen and AJ Preller bring in the right hitting coach for this team? This is a very unique team in terms of the way it's constructed. They have a lot of guys who are going to get you 10 to 20 homers a season. They don't have currently a legitimate 35, 40 homer threat. Last season, You had Fernando Tatis, who hit into 20 home runs. Manny Machado hit over 20 home runs. But it's really tough to project this team without obtaining a major middle of the order bat. So this roster, as currently built, lacks that, which leads us into, the offseason and what will the San Diego Padres look to do this offseason to really build upon what they have set the foundation for. It's a very interesting team as currently constructed. So if we want to really go ahead and dive in and look at what the team is working with, it's quite interesting because I'm going to do another share screen here. One of the handy bits about this is because here we can see the team as currently constructed. Fernando Tatis in right field, Jackson Merrill and Ramon Laureano finishing at the outfield. You've got Manny Machado at third base. You have Gavin Sheets, who could take over at first base. Now, Sheets was very strong for the San Diego Padres, so it's definitely within the realm of possibility that he winds up taking over at first base. So you can definitely say that, you have a first baseman in Gavin Sheets. You have a guy who can give you some power, as we look here, because Gavin Sheets hit 19 home runs last year, as we can see here. There we go. Gavin Sheets hit 19 home runs last year. The projections had him hitting 16. He hit 19 homers in 145 games. And, we can see the WAR was only at 1.3, but here's the thing. He spent 64 of his games in the outfield, and then the other half-ish at DH, 13 games at first base. We know Gavin Sheets can play first base, so he could possibly be an option. At that point, you're looking for a DH. So with the Padres kind of having this sort of limbo with terms with regards to what they're working with on the roster, it only gets exemplified, it only gets amplified, actually, because of the news that came out earlier today. And that was that the San Diego Padres, let me see if I can find said statement. The San Diego Padres ownership is reportedly looking into selling the San Diego Padres, which is, quite frankly, news to a lot of people, myself included. It was kind of came as a bit of a shock that the Padres are in rumors of being sold. Now, is this a guarantee that they're going to sell the team? No. Is it very much in the realm of possibility? Also, yes. So there's a lot going on. It's a very much still, I would go on to call it a fluid situation, because we can see here the statement, the Seidler family today announced it has decided to initiate a formal process to explore strategic options for the San Diego Padres, including a potential sale of the franchise. It's very much a tense situation to really sit down and try to analyze, because, on one hand, everyone has been saying, like within the organization, we keep hearing the fact of honoring Peter's legacy and love for the Padres, and we keep hearing that, but then the actions to some feel like a mixed bag. So from here, what we can gather from the statement is that the Padres ownership is looking into options for the team, be it getting investors, be it selling, be it some kind of restructure in the current organizational ownership realm. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Another thing about this statement that I think gets overlooked because you're talking about selling the team is during the process and as we prepare for the 2026 season, the Padres will continue to focus on its players, employees, fans, and community while putting every resource into winning a World Series championship. We remain fully committed to this team, its fans, and the San Diego community. This statement coming from John Seidler, chairman of the Padres. Now, there is something about this statement that can be seen as true. You can look at this and say, okay, They're going to look to invest in the team. And frankly, this is the time to do it because we don't know what's going to happen after next season. It looks more and more and more that there is going to be a lockout or labor issue, much like we had prior to 2022, much like we had in 2020. It is looking like there's going to be some sort of labor impasse between the players union and Major League Baseball and owners. So, fans would hope that the team is able to invest into the team for this year, go out, fill in some of your holes on the roster, bring in talent that is going to be a quality. For instance, the Padres are rumored to not really be in on any big names, but the Padres have been heavily linked to Tatsuya Imai in recent days, so that is definitely a free agent pursuit that they are going to look into without a doubt. Padres need a new starting pitcher, especially since Yu Darvish is now out for 2026. It's interesting to note that with all of the things going on surrounding this organization, the fact that Yu Darvish is going to be out for all of 2026 is like the fifth thing that we've gotten to today. So that's part of what we got to unpack here with this team, because there is definitely a lot to discuss. In other Padres related news, one of the team's top prospects, or soon to be top prospects, in Carson Montgomery, just started for the Arizona Fall League. It's Peoria Javelinas. So he's pitched 2 innings, struck out 4, as the Javelinas look to make a run for the finals of the Arizona Fall League. They're currently leading 6-2 as the time of streaming, as of going live. Anyone else on the Padres that is playing in this game? Ryan Jackson, one of the team's breakout prospects this year, is 0 for 3 after having a 3 for 4 day yesterday, and Tucker Musgrove's thrown 2/3 of an inning. Not too much else going on the prospect front. Our annual top 30 list is going to be out, hopefully by the end of the year, but we shall see. If you are watching and you have any questions for myself or our EVT staff, please leave them in the comments below, and we'll go on to addressing them as time moves along. Now, we have done some interesting coverage here at East Village Times. I'll take this opportunity to discuss some of our recent work, which gives us a look into some of what the team could look to do going forward. So free agency is started. That's going on. The GM meetings were this week. And the San Diego Padres have been linked to pitching, especially in wake of Yu Darvish's injury. Now, currently, if I can pull up Fangraphs again, currently the team's rotation looks like, how does it look? Let's share the tab. Currently, the team's rotation looks like this. You have Nick Pivetta, Joe Musgrove coming off Tommy John, Randy Vasquez and his, it's probably skill at this point. It's no longer, I would go as far to say it's probably not going to be double magic in 2026. And then you've got JP Sears, who was all right. And then you've got Matt Waldron, who is out of options. Now, the team does have a lot of depth in the bullpen. You've got guys like Sean Reynolds and David Morgan, Adrian Morahone, who have been floated around as reliever to starter options, and that's definitely guys you can look into in terms of making the conversion. But it's looking more and more likely that the team is going to need depth from free agency, because you have Johnny Brito coming off Tommy John. so you don't know how he's going to do. Jason Adam is going to miss the first month or two of the season. He returns from that knee injury. So it's definitely going to be a lot of thinking. And, the Padres have been linked to quite a few guys who could make an impact. Recently, they were linked to guys like Cody Ponce and Tatsuya Imai, who we have covered over on EastVillageTimes.com. So I think the most interesting candidate for the Padres when it comes to, bringing in an arm has to be Tatsuya Imai. One of the most, I don't want to call him hyped up because that would feel like I'm doing him dirty, but one of the most exciting free agent pitchers that we've seen. Now, people have been very quick to say, he's not a Yamamoto or a Roki Sasaki. And, you can say that, but he does possess some above average stuff. He's got a high riding fastball that can be above average, as well as his slider. His slider's real interesting because what he can do with the slider is it's kind of something that we call a reverse breaker. Like, it's not going to break south-southwest. It kind of has a sort of north southeast break to it. So the way that it would work is it breaks towards arm side instead of breaking glove side, which is interesting. Not a lot of arms, not a lot of pitchers who have something like that. The last one I can remember is Dauri Moreta. So, he's got a changeup, he's got a splitter. There's some concerns with Imai about his command coming over from Japan, but if we look at his numbers in 2025, he started 24 of 24 games, 363 innings, had a 1.92 ERA, a FIP of 2.01. He allowed home runs on 4.6% of batted balls, or 4.6% of fly balls. The BABIP was at 236, which is why you can see the xFIP and the FIP are a little bit higher than they would be normally. But still, this sort of production, even with a bit of an adjustment period to the MLB ball, you're working with some pretty good underlying stuff here. If we go to his peripherals, struck out 27.8% of batters, walked only 7%, held batters to a 172 batting average against, averaged less than 0.9 base runners per inning, if you will. ERA minus and FIP minus are, if you're under 100, it's good. So he was 37% better ERA-wise compared to the rest of MPB, 34% better in terms of FIP. So there's definitely a lot of good to work with here with Imai. And you can actually kind of say the same thing about Cody Ponce because he's coming back from the KBO, from Korea. Now, he is a little bit older than Imai. Ponce is 31. And he did spend the last couple seasons in MPB prior to 2025, where he made the jump to the KBO. As we can see in MPB, he's ironing out some stuff when he was with the Nippon Ham Fighters. And you can see here the strikeout stuff more so in line with his early minor league days, major league action, but he doesn't walk a ton of guys. And then in 2024, last season with the Reckitt Golden Eagles of the MPB, arguably one of the unluckiest pitchers in the entire league. He had a BABIP of 382, which explains why his ERA was at 6, but his FIP was at 3. So his ERA was almost twice that of his FIP. And then we get to this past season, 2025, makes the jump over to the KBO and breaks a whole bunch of records. In 29 starts, he went 17-1. Even though he didn't throw a complete game, he threw 180 innings, which only one Padre pitcher threw more, and that was Nick Pivetta this season. Struck out over 12 batters per 9, walked under 2. His ERA at 1.89. FIP and xFIP in the low 2s. So this was ace caliber production without a doubt. The projections have him for a mid-4 ERA, mid-4 FIP. I think a 304 batting average against, it's pretty much in line with the MLB average. even though some of the strikeouts might come down, his pitch mix is not really one that's going to suffer from coming over to MLB because he's got a profound arsenal with which to work with as a starting pitcher. As we can see here, that strikeout percentage translates to 36.2% of batters struck out against 5.9, K minus walk rate of 30.3, one of the best in all of professional baseball. Held batters to 197 average, so on and so forth. The BABIP was at 304. The strand rate might go down, but even if it's somewhere here, if these numbers in terms of whip and strikeouts can remain or survive the adjustment to the MLB ball, then it's going to be fine. So the Padres could look to sign him. Jeff Passan has linked the Padres to a guy like Cody Ponce, and we here at EVT did so as well, almost, if not exactly, a month ago when covering possible free agent targets. Cody Ponce is one of those guys who could make sense and be within the budget as well, because we don't know how much the Padres exactly have to work with. It's still very much up in the air how much salary space, how much payroll they're going to have. So they're probably going to look to add at least one rotation arm and a bat at the very least. And someone like Ponce is projected to make $20 million over 3 years or $25 million over 4. Very much like Nick Martinez's first contract with the Padres. He's in that realm, and I think this is such a Padres move to bring in a guy like him who struggled early in his MLB career, went overseas, rebuilt his entire career, essentially. This is a good landing spot for an arm like him. Now, another thing that was reported, given that this week is the week of GM meetings, so of course we're hearing a lot about what's going on here, what's going on there. The Padres have been linked to bringing back Luis Ariz, according to Robert Murray, a FanSided. This is a whole debate. We could do a whole episode that is just debating bringing back Luis Ariz or letting him go. And it's interesting because last season, we're led to believe that he's fully healthy, and it's arguably a career low season for Luis Ariz. Even with a broken thumb, he still hit over 300 in 2024. Then we get to last year, and unfortunately for the Padres and Luis Ariz, he ends up hitting 292 with a 327 on base, is slugging just under 400, which is not far from ideal. It's a far cry from most of his career averages. And if we look comparing his slash line in 2024 and 2025, he struck out less and he walked more. But part of the issue is that he was just trying to hit the ball the opposite way instead of hitting it roll it all fields, as we can see here. He was still barely above average in terms of the bat. I don't mean this in a negative way, but how do you have a better year with a broken thumb? It's just surprising to me, and quite frankly, the Savant numbers back it up. Because when it comes to, what did Luis Ariz bring to the table 2024 and 2025, as you can see, here's his numbers from 2025. He's a -9 batting run value. When your game is predicated on putting the bat on the ball and you're worth -9 in terms of run value, you can see how many singles. If we split the field here, it's a lot to the left side. It's all in this cluster. But his slugging is to the pull side. which is rather interesting. And if we look at his 2024, he's somehow better because he's using all fields. There's not an empty gap in left center like here. If we go back to 24, he's actually using left center, right center, middle of the field. He still is not whiffing a ton. Like the strikeout rate, the whiff rate are still the lowest in the league. He's squaring up the ball, but he's not hitting the ball in the air or on a line. So I've been saying this ever since he became free agent. This is going to be one of the most, if not the single most fascinating free agency chapter, whatever you want to call it, because he doesn't strike out. He puts the bat on the ball, but he doesn't hit for power. He hits for average, and even then, he didn't really do much of that last year. So he doesn't have any bat speed. See here, bat speed is the worst in the league. He doesn't barrel the ball. He doesn't hit the ball hard. Average exit velo is in the 6th percentile. And for Petco Park, a park that is notorious for having, a very pitcher-friendly environment, especially early in the year, how much of this will play? And how much money is he going to want? Because there's a chance he's looking for 8 figures. And the Padres are probably not going to give him that again. So there's definitely... It's interesting. It's going to be a fun storyline to keep track of. But frankly, it's one where you have to stop and think, does he make the team better? If you think the answer is no, then the answer is no. I'm going to get some water here. And we're back. Arraez is not the only free agent that the Padres will be losing. The Padres are also set to lose right-hander Dylan Cease. And this is another interesting case of free agency because if you watched one of our episodes before this season, you will know that I said Dylan Cease is going to get $200 million. I just have a feeling. And if you watch that episode and you look at these numbers, you're probably thinking, how is he going to get $200 million? There is going to be a team out there. I have no idea who it's going to be, but there will be a team out there that sees this and says he's worth $200 million. And 168 innings across 32 starts, which, if my math is correct, averages out to under 5 1/3 innings per start. Dylan Cease struck out 29.8% of batters, had one of the highest whiff rates in the league, and he didn't allow a ton of barrels, but he did walk almost 10% of the batters he faced. And when you look at last season, the walk rate was arguably similar. He's still getting a ton of whiffs. The chase rate this year the chase rate last year was at 30.5. This season, the chase rate's even higher. And so is the whiff rate. And yet still, it wasn't working. So it was a weird season. So it's really hard to assess how much he's going to get. He was nearly traded to the Astros at the deadline, but it didn't go through. So this is, again, it's interesting that the Padres have so many fascinating free agent cases this offseason. Dylan Cease was tendered a qualifying offer. Michael King was also tendered a qualifying offer, which is roughly $21 million. It's a 1-year, $21 million contract, roughly. So we're not quite sure whether, are they going to accept it? Are they going to decline it? In Dylan Cease's case, I think he's going to decline it because when we look at these numbers, 215 strikeouts and a strikeout percentage near 30 is not terrible. An expected ERA of 3.4 is not terrible. The walk rate can kind of be worked around because, interestingly, he's always had a walk rate between 9 and 11%. So, with Cease, you know what you're getting. He allowed roughly the same amount of barrels. This season was very identical to last. When you really look at everything, it's just alarmingly similar except for this. Because when he was getting into jams, it just kept on snowballing. Like the pitch mix is very much still the same. The usage rates are still the same. Just his curveball, his sinker were hit around way more than was expected. The inverse is true for the sweeper. So it was really hard to quantify how his season went with Cease. And then with Michael King, even though the Padres are rumored to have interest in him, they did give him a qualifying offer. It's still possible he does return. But, the Padres would love for him to return because if he can rebuild his value, it benefits him to get a long-term deal. And, him coming back would give the team another top-end starting pitcher that they're going to need. That pushes Randy Vasquez down to your 4, JP Sears down to your 5, and you feel a lot more comfortable with that as, if you're Craig Stammen, if you're AJ Preller, having a top 3 of King, Pivetta, and a returning Musgrove, even if it takes him a bit to, get into gear, you feel much more confident with that setup than you probably would if you're in a playoff series and you have to start Randy Vasquez, which, to be fair, at the end of last season would not have been terrible, considering how he performed against the Brewers. But it's, again, a lot to think about with this team. And I think we're going to call it here. So to those of you who watched, thank you all very much for watching. I know this was kind of very scatterbrained, and normally we'll have some of our staff on and it'll be much more a little bit more of a discourse, a little more of an engaging stream. We're trying these out, so hopefully you'll stick with us through the learning process and we'll go from there. So to everyone who tuned in, Thank you all very much for watching. This is Diego Garcia, the host of the Padres EVT podcast, signing off. Thank you so much, everybody.